I got my commercial multi, and I remember the fellow telling me, you know what? You are a professional pilot. And I was really, pleased with that, obviously, but I was also kind of taken aback because I just failed my commercial check ride with the guy.
Right.
But he said, no, you failed the check ride, but that didn't stop you. You didn't stop flying the plane. You knew there was a job to be done, and you kept going, and that's what a professional pilot does.
Isn't that incredible how professionalism and failures have nothing to do with each other?
Well said, actually.
Really interesting.
Well, it might be a stretch to say nothing because everyone fails, right? But not everyone can be professional.
Right. No,
about
but
it.
what I'm saying is you could be professional and fail, and the failing
Absolutely.
doesn't take away from your professionalism.
You're right.
I think what has more to do with being professional is getting back up and trying again.
That's right.
Which is, flying is a fantastic opportunity to do that again and again and again and again.
We talk about professionalism in aviation, which is a real hot topic now, and probably deserves some of our time. So let me just cut straight into it.
Yeah, well, I was about to ask you, how much do you think, as in your day-to-day life in a 747, people you fly with, where does professionalism fall in terms of importance?
Professionalism needs to be at the top of the list.
Why?
We can all fly the plane. At this point, we're all 747 pilots. Okay? We've all had this many hours of command time in this jet and that jet. Some of the guys I fly with are astronauts, Some of the guys I fly with, ladies I fly with, have less experience than others, but everyone's had plenty. And learning to fly the plane physically is something we can all do now. And we've flown, this for many of us is our 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th type, something like that. And we've flown all over the world, and a lot of us are a heck of a lot more experienced than even I am. Maybe double the number of hours or triple the number of hours as instructor on these airplanes. They're really dialed in. All of us can fly these planes. The question is how we're going to do it together, because the mission isn't just manipulating the flight controls successfully and not breaking laws when you're doing it. That is what we do when we're private pilots, when we're student pilots. So there's a big jump from, say, commercial to airline transport pilot, and that jump is professionalism, because that's what's most important. How you handle your environment as opposed to letting it handle you, and how you bring others into your operation as opposed to letting others or allowing yourself to let others to impede your operation. These are all hot topics and all things that we concentrate on these days. Of course, we never let go of flying the plane.
Right.
But that's also part of professionalism. Imagine we used to say, and we still do, aviate, navigate, communicate. This is the order of importance of tasks. But now we have let go of that a little bit, and we say, no, hang on. Aviate, aviate, aviate. Never stop. Because now we have two people in a plane, and whether you have two people in a plane built for two people, or if you have one person in a plane typed for one person, you can never stop flying the plane. Because the second it's taken you somewhere, now you're reacting to it. You're chasing your tail.
I heard someone say that as a pilot, you never want to become a passenger.
That's probably a much more elegant way of saying it.
Yeah.
But you never want to become a passenger when you're the pilot.
Yeah.
And it's a fact, because you look up and you're lost immediately.
Yeah.
So you can never let go.
Right.
And I don't mean lost necessarily in terms of where am I, but situational awareness is key. And the environment is one thing. The weather around you, your physical geographic location is another. And where you are on a checklist, for example, as I learned when I was 18 years old, turning 19, is that you really want to keep track of that too. Because you could do something really dumb. You have this thing laid out on paper for you, and you can still mess it up. And the way you don't mess it up is your professionalism. The way you get a good situation to go bad is having poor professionalism.
So you're saying that CRM, first and foremost, for it to work well, requires two people to be professional.
Yes, and CRM is an element of professionalism.
And CRM stands for what?
It's Crew Resource Management, evolved from the original phrase Cockpit Resource Management. We talk about crew resource management now, And it's various stages of that in its evolution, but it's been on for about 20, 30 years now in earnest. And it is an element of professionalism. Communication is always key between two people, or any number of people, that is. But imagine if CRM is one element. There are lots of them. We talk about the levels of professionalism. The first one is, okay, you're skilled enough that you can be reliably in charge of this airplane, such to will trust paying passengers with you. This is base level aviation.
Right.
Professionalism.
Right.
Or any professionalism. We'll pay you to do it. We trust you that much. You're that good. We'll pay you to do it. That's pretty base level, and that's not, that in a sticky situation, and $4 might get you a cup of coffee at the Starbucks, with your airline discount at the airport. But it's not good for much if things go awry, necessarily. What you really want is that high level of professionalism where you are making, not only are you pursuing your job the best that you can, to be the best that you can, you're providing a platform for the people around you to up their level. When your professionalism is on such a level that other people are inspired to raise their own level of proficiency, of goodness in aviation, that's a high level of professionalism in general, when you can inspire others to be a better version of themselves on the job or in life.
Just to make this real, what would be an example from an airline's pilot standpoint of flying with an unprofessional pilot? How would that play out? Stupid example.
Okay. The most obvious thing is you get someone to show up late or out of uniform. It's not that a uniform makes the pilot. It definitely does not. I could care less what a guy wears, how he does his hair or doesn't.
Does his hair, yeah.
Who cares if the guy has 5 o'clock shadow, he thinks that's his style or something fantastic, good for him, or a beard or clean shaven. I do not care. I don't think that one hairstyle or makeup on women or whatever it's supposed to be that's fashionable has anything to do with your ability as a pilot. It can't possibly. However, if the expectation in your contract says you will have your face cleanly shorn or a neatly kept mustache like is so common, if you don't have those and you show up with 5 o'clock shadow, you're telling me that you do not care about this section of your agreement with the company. Mm-hmm. Whether you like it or whether you don't, you signed the agreement that said you were going to shave before you show up to work.
So as a pilot, when you see people show up like that, you're saying typically later down the line, that type of attitude pours out in different areas.
It can, but it would be unprofessional of me to presume it. Because I don't know what caused that situation. Maybe he's actually out here saving the day for us. Maybe they short called him. He was out having his run, and they say, hey, can you make it? We got a flight that needs going, and you're the only one who can help it go on time. He might have said, yeah, but there's no way I can have time to shower and shave. And they might have said, please take it. So I'm not going to say to him, hey, you know what? You need a razor, buddy? Because that would be me being presumptuous, and that would be unprofessional.
Right.
And it would immediately set a horrible tone, right? Because now I'm aggressive, I'm negative. Why? So I don't know this guy.
It's fascinating you said that. The thing I thought about when you said set a horrible tone, here's something I'm curious about. Where's the line where once you cross it, how do you go about figuring out where to place the line between, from crew resource management standpoint, between here's how much I'm going to swallow my tongue, beyond which we will deliberately, or I don't have a choice, we will enter into an awkward cockpit situation. How do you go about determining here's the extent to which I should and will swallow my tongue for the sake of us being cool in terms of the energy in the cockpit? That's like, how do you look at that?
It's all a cost-benefit analysis. So every day is going to be different. There's no hard line. There's no hard line. If someone's running away with, a bad attitude, you can sort of do the rope-a-dope game because, sometimes you got 15 hours, right? And someone will just speak his mind or her mind, and you'll think to yourself, okay.
Dude, people sit there and talk for 15 hours.
Well, I mean, you could definitely go on with someone for 3, 4, 5 hours at a
Right.
time. You know, your whole shift, you might just chat away. It could be 7 hours, no problem. And you might get done with your shift, get relieved, and then go back to the back and keep going. You know, you don't know. You might really get on with a guy like House on Fire, or you might really not. It might be very quiet, which is also potentially awkward depending on your personality type.
Right.
But forgetting how you pass the time, if someone is really running their mouth in a way that's detrimental to your capabilities to execute your job, you got to say something.
Right. Or not just running their mouth, like doing something, right? I'm sure there's certain things that you could see the other pilot do.
Sure.
And for the sake of maintaining good crew resource management, you won't open your mouth.
Okay, so this is a great discussion because we run whole classes on this. You know, whole days go by, whole days worth of discussion. But here's a really good example. In a 747 or any transport category airplane, and some non-transport category airplanes, balancing the fuel is a big deal.
Mm.
In our airplane, that's automatic. Mostly. You can manually do it, and you get closer. So the question is, do you do it? Are you happy to have one extra ton on the right side or the left side and just leave it be? Or do you want to balance it manually? Because the flight ops manual says you shall fly with balanced fuel.
Mm.
Okay. It also says don't balance the fuel manually unless you are way out of whack. Reason being, you could be hiding a fuel leak. So if you notice that you're 500 keys low on one side and you balance the fuel, and you might be 200 keys low later and you balance the fuel,
fascinating.
you're actually hiding the leak because you arrive and you're balanced.
Because you're not giving the system a chance to show its faults.
That's correct.
Got it.
That's exactly right.
Got it.
So do you fly? I mean, the question for these folks is then, do you fly around with this imbalance, or do you fly around? You know, it could be like a ton or 2 tons.
Ooh, so this is where different pilots have a different philosophy of when am I going to do it manually. I see where you're going with it.
Exactly. So now we have a gray area because what's the right thing to do? Now, if you keep digging into the books, the Flight Crew Training Manual, the 747 says, look, you got to be unbalanced by like 10 tons.
Mm.
There is no significant aerodynamic issue. If you fly unbalanced by a ton or 2, don't worry. Reason being, well, forget the reason of that, but let's just say there's a dummy check on that. There's a caution message. This airplane's pretty smart, right? And it'll tell you, hey, by the way, dummy, fuel's imbalanced at about 3-ish tons
Right.
on one side. Maybe that's the point you should start worrying about it, when it tells you to worry, right? So guys want to be professional, and they want to fly it tight. And they say, no, we're going to get this thing exactly square. It's good for the airplane, you know, because there's metal fatigue if you're flying sideways, and that's dangerous.
Right.
So we don't want that. But we also don't want to mask a fuel leak.
Right.
So what happens when you get to an obvious point where you're manually adjusting according to the standard operating procedure? It's called tank to engine. When you've run out of fuel in the center tank and you're trying to balance it so that you have the number 1 engine running on that tank and the number 2 on this tank and the number 3 on its tank and 4, it's called tank to engine.
Mm-hmm.
And there's the point at which you do that is around 53 tons and thereabouts, because that's where the balance is 13, 13, 13, 13, 52, whatever thereabouts. And there's inevitably going to be a little bit lower on one side. Some guys will leave that crossfeed valve open for just a second, or a minute, or 2 minutes. Rebalance the fuel. Because they think that makes them a little bit sharper, a little bit tighter. So do you say something to the guy? What do you say if you say something? Because it's absolutely unprofessional according to following standard operating procedure. We are meant to fly the manual when we can.
Right.
Doesn't hurt anybody to be a ton low. We know that.
Right.
It's expressly prohibited. So what do you say to the guy?
Or not.
Or not.
Right.
There's not always the right answer, even for the same guy. Because maybe he's in a bad mood, yeah?
Right.
So you can say something to him, maybe. If you're clever, you can think of some way to get through to him and say, hey, I'm not comfortable with doing that.
Right.
but you've made his mood worse and you've taken yourself out of his toolkit.
Dude, the rest of your trip is going to be shit.
Potentially. I mean, you're not doing yourself a lot of favors there, right? By nitpicking.
He's going to think of you as someone who I can't be myself around. He's going to look at every single move I make. He'll probably report me if I do something too crazy. And now there's a lot of tension in the cockpit.
Yeah, I mean, it goes down that road. It doesn't always go all the way down that road. It doesn't cross the precipice, but it registers.
Uh-huh.
If someone is nitpicking, you say, okay, all right. But you know what? I'm gonna do it this way.
Yeah.
So, do you insist? I mean, at what point is this diminishing returns? And it depends on it depends on the relationship you have with the person. It depends on what they ate for breakfast that day, maybe. It depends on all these things, and you have to be sensitive to all these things because you do want the right outcome. But some things are not also in your control.